Hello, humanity. There was a possession over the identity of the office and the location slash S of the White House over its occupants, no matter who they are. I put a link to a video with um, Pre- former President Trump, President slash Chief Trump, where the video prompter went off. And I put a video link to former President Obama, former President slash Chief Obama, and Seinfeld in a context that shows an example of relativity, even if the whole thing is made up. In every context, we're using this method of observation too. For example, regarding witch trials and the value of even if the whole thing was made up, it is about the fact, cheap nature, torture, extortion, slavery method, sickly, non-distinctly against everyone. Sickly distinctly, but sickly non-distinctly too. And is the value of that as effective means to measure and to maintain identities of voicing for positive or negative things like integrity, like the names of the sciences, as roles, needs, styles, and natures, showing how to explain them. Self-value, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought while being and having been used remotely that way further too as collusion slash S further with that original use slash S of all locations slash S before America's founders were born in more than 13 colonies entrenched with slavery north and south, for example, as a method sickly distinctly to keep again functionally how sickly non-distinctly against every single person. Not one person had free speech, and everyone had to pretend other as collusions with all it had done, while it had sustained this against everyone, every name A through Z. The human species volumes different slash S are now being and haven't been used tactically ulterior from its system natures as the identity of space slash existence, which is an identity of relativity slash hyperrelativity per its identity of relationship to itself. Three ways bound that we could observe. But each of the sciences has syntax reliant upon the other sciences' voices too. And they are criminally foreign influence, criminal insidious natures of positive and negatives per forgiveness necessary too, because it is at the same time with overt criminal enterprises, private ones. The names of the sciences, the names of the sports, the names of the branches of government, the names of the intelligence tied to them, the differences of that. And that was sustained even to keep manifest self-body roles as uses of the different slash S at location slash S relativity. Relativity is plural to the state corrections offices and judicial branch offices of Connecticut, for example. There are hyper evidential means recorded that we could observe. That witch trials, the people who know the most about witch trials, we could observe more than that. Just for how left out, how that breaching method, its roles with the torture, extortion, and slavery of George Washington, for example. No one even allows the extortion of George Washington to be used as evidences simultaneously with where and how we have the evidences of the whites of eyes, black people's whites of eyes. We have the same color eyes and different color eyes at the same time per the identity of relativity slash hyperrelativity in projection to us. And if we appreciate it in nature honestly and sanely, we could observe other things, others ourselves. Blame for things that nature shows us to observe are relative to the value of the human fact, cheap nature breaching method being and having been one of those things that witch trials, for example, was about, even if it was made up. It's what slavery was about. One of the things that it is about, true always. And we appreciate that we could observe other things, others ourselves, being and having been. And when someone's valuing other things, others ourselves, blame for things that nature itself and our founders told us to blame on a human fact sheet, nature breaching method. Nature demonstrates that too. This breaching method showed certain type of victim / hyper victim. The only way they could defend their takes on their descriptions. The morality of the reason is to self-value roles of predicate acts with facts, method / s that conformed the identity ground, location / s to only be capable of affording why and how really the suburbs in America were designed before America's founders were born, the basic scale and nature of them, while reliant more and more upon other locations, areas, nature's needs of means to cause positives, only more and more only available if the self-value rules with criminally foreign influence tactically and criminally foreign influence and criminal insidiousness natures of positives and uses of truths for lies. For example, or tries truths to screen lies or to screen motivations increasingly. A breaching method knew that it would have to keep its roles with every name and uses of them per method, just like a magician could stack the deck with one card and then know where it is after by little tricks, good ways. It's got us all relative to databases since before computers, since before America's founders were born, and descriptions of nature's archaeological evidences. The same way, we're going to have to appreciate the hyper-archaeological. We're going to have to appreciate the hyper-evidential. I am not a lawyer. We could appreciate it for the discernment of how all sides of criminal and civil cases about such critical things as witch trials, let alone where the syntax and the differences of roles of overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and the three branches of government used remotely criminally foreign influence. Also, those differences to hide behind roles with the breaching method, clearer than day when we observe the syntax possession / s as they are really, manifest. Styles too, forced by nature, the same way nature forces boxers to have a boxing style if they want to last. The same way, and everyone has to adapt based on like, I don't know how, if you're short, you better be able to shoot the basketball well if you're going to play and dribble well, if you're going to play against tall guys in basketball, for example. But nature is hyper additional. Every difference, even if it's a made up difference, it uses that in demonstration of the same thing / s, which is the extent we could discern itself, which is only to an extent. It comes with its complete identity of relationship to itself. It's an extent as every subject we make treatments of. It's an extent we could discern as those three parts of time, past that we know was true always, active now grouped, realities we know are true always together the way they are. And like the seasons, multiple seasons that are not here now, but we know their identity, their value is here to an extent. And we are being shown to appreciate, to understand that wherever we could have an extent of any subject, it comes with its complete identity relationship to itself and the only increasing value of that. One of the ways we could discern that is also because of where and how and why. It shows science shows that Earth and ourselves have a concentrated identity of relationship to the identity of all space/existence. And this is where consciousness itself can be demonstrated to answers. We are demonstrated to that there is a simultaneous / hypersimultaneous. As the extent we can discern of the complete identity of all space/existence, manifest that way through three distinct identities as distinct parts of the complete identity of forever nature. These three grouped identities of time, that extent we know was actual of the past and now and to come. So they come simultaneously with that portion of itself that we know is also true always, but we know it, we don't know about it, but we know what it was. We know it was. And there's that part of time that of the future that has not gotten here yet, is already value here now, but we don't know about it. But all five have a connection to each other. And the difference between how it is and why it is grouped 5 ways, distinctly from 3 ways, the same singular / hyper singular identity is relative to our perception of it, just like a perception of your body is a semi-nature relationship to your complete body. That complete body is also semi-nature relationship simultaneously to the species body. And per the identity that has us as a distinct species, but it has the other species the way it is too, as simultaneous natures, per further hyper simultaneous nature. That is not ourselves, but it is anyway, to an extent. Every self is itself. And that extent comes with its complete identity relationship to itself. Even if you make something up, all individual parts, all grouped parts, and the simultaneous parts have that same identity of possession over themselves, distinctly non-days between through all things, Foxcts. It is surging through all things alone, and even force, well, not as force, but anyway, many pray. So, English and the ancient languages were revealed to teach this before the names A through Z as leaderships of the phenomenon of locations, areas, and states, 3 ways grouped. They forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded them to respond to things as fact treatment nature, not knowing how to do so properly, more and more. And so they would defend doing it wrongly because they had to do it because of impositions like associated with the ones today with the border. Because the counters also have collusions that they also don't realize. Forgiveness is because there is not just there is a complete possession over any leader, no matter how powerful they get. See, with the physics of security, they have kept the identity of physics greater than and more and smaller than. Nature shows us to appreciate how everything is great and find every identity comes with its own that is greater than and more finite than its own. while as its own. For example, Fox Connecticut News tonight had a video about someone who reportedly stabbed a state police, and they said it was on the uprise, on the rise. People attacking police. This breaching method measured and maintains all natures of differences, simultaneously hurt and helped through its systems of also defenses of that, as what to do legally, etc. All types of experts are relying upon other natures of experts individually grouped and together. Where and how we have this hyperscope having black pupils, whites of eyes, per nature's identity, demonstrating difference to us, where and how we have the same color eyes, different color eyes at the same time. And when we pay attention, everything is about its difference. As a hyper invisible, but still discernible, that is in the parts of speech of English and of other languages. It is more probable and is increasingly more demonstrable to theorize, let alone to convict, that the parts of speech being grouped more ways than how 3 distinctly from 5 is being generated by that. And to explain this, it requires us to appreciate the extent of its identity we could discern. It's true always, not denying the slightest exception, too. Not valuing it, in other words, not valuing other someone else valuing it. Where and how, again, we are manifest as fact in nature. This is also as styles. And so programming and its manifest relativity, for example, can be drawn relative to this and pictures. 2D is flat, 2-dimensional. 3-dimensional is still flat on a screen, but it is faked when you start having the layers and you change the distance by changing size proportion. In other words, but all these things are a mimic of this identity of value / value progression. That is an unceasingly increasingly valuable identity of value / value progression, unlike all others, per means to be led by it. And I'll donate pantheism if we do it in a form we're going to lock down. In other words, in other words, there's things that are not debatable, that are pretended debatable. And the reason this has gotten, and this is the relativity of how this gotten away with too, is to where and to how. The breaching method is a scientific value communicated to us about by our founders. Our founders also simultaneously communicated to us to understand and to pay attention to where and to how no one had free speech, and everyone had to pretend other or be sensed. That was the nature of the laws. There was a method by that knew there would be methods of criminal insidiousness natures pretending other as styles that it could duck behind, as it also knew that nature would continuously nature itself would continually demonstrate to humanity a human fact human nature breaching method is one of the things associated with the worst causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures on all locations /s. Acts like predicate acts, natures like criminal insidiousness, natures wrongdoing itself. So long that they got people roles of predicate acts with facts, methods, natures, needs, styles. so bad that, in other words, that they had to start self-valuing roles, means, needs to exploit how they could kill people through other people, as shown means to and needs to by the breaching method, that identity of hyper sophistication that measures and maintains nature's demonstrations of itself and our founders' demonstrations of it, replaced. James Madison's and the founders behind him and his plan, replaced. And pretending other, using their speech and truths for lies as styles, and using, allowing others to use that. And the difference of that is also exploited. All sides in criminal and civil cases, criminal enterprises overt, private ones, and criminal insidiousness only allowed to be as the value of all syntax nature of names A through Z. Otherwise, that body would be sensed. Relative, for example, to an as answer, with answers to where and to how to why. We have these simultaneously hyper-evidential proofs that are better than perfect and increasingly valuable to answer our questions and to lead our questions and to reveal evolution's fruits and gifts and means out of nowhere, and the means to sense why, to discern if those means are positive only as criminal insidiousness used by ourselves or others, and if the difference, is being used, which all that is. Nature's identity is hypernated pure. In other words, and it employed all differences to come to this, to come to that quality of fact-human nature capable of defending the Constitution unabridged. In Marbury versus Madison, it's meaning properly, because quote, all appearances must satisfy. All appearances of real justice must satisfy all appearances of real justice, unquote. Black pupil. How we've had the black pupils, whites of eyes, the same color eyes, and different color eyes in that being and having been projected by nature's identity itself. And others pretending that titles or jobs or integrity spoke. In other words, we teach the simple with actually proper language and simple to understand for little kids. It breaks the formal syntax in nature, and identity use is relied upon by the identities of the law, formally and private, already taken to collusions with the difference of theirs, worse, or the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, names on all sides of criminal and civil cases, lawyers, right back to all locations /s, and manifest at corners. A Leahy family is one of the ones at Harvard Hospital through administrations, Republican and Democrat, where they have all the countries in the news, the ones fighting with each other, liking each other, and collusions with themselves, planting fake evidences, and with the FBI, former FBI Director Robert Lusk and his co-defendants. They have criminally foreign influence uses of the Facebook pages of New Britain Superior Court, passion crimes after the World Trade Center attack. I've been asking since before the World Trade Center attack to get them on paper, people associated with them. In other words, the courts in Connecticut District Court and Harvard courts and their family members have roles with former director of the FBI, Robert Lusk, and his co-defendants, and their lawyer, and people next to his office. Robert Chevery is their lawyer, and like a Thaddeus Grabowski next to Fox Connecticut News, involved with a whole bunch of people involved with child abusers and uses of their religious locations and sensibilities, where how the police are fishing for means to cover up. They on a mass scale that there's predicate acts with facts rolls real sick, for example, with people that use the word, oh, these people are known to the police. Even when they use that for the proper reasons, and they don't even understand. In other words, but they understand to an extent if we pay attention. But there are also delusions that our experts have. And this breaching method knew that all natures of experts at the same time would have delusions or they would be sensed. And they just attach people to fake conversations because there are identities of natures of employments, including doctors of mental health and therapists and people associated with phones companies. The agencies fabricate phone transcripts and conversations with people to use investigators, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought. Harvard Hospital has roles with foreign and domestic military and all sides of the World Trade Center attack, and with names next to the World Trade Center that day, and on off it, and at the court next to it, and the court itself involved with changing the date of legal papers. That was proven after the World Trade Center attack, but it was in the courts. It was in the courts, in the case in the court that day. Names on all sides of that case and that court involved with sequence shifts against me, predicate acts against me. And they don't even know the extent of it themselves. These are the police forging names, switching names, taking names similar to other people's names. In other words, wire crime acts and methods. Also, intercities, uses of confessions by the breaching method distinctly from the church, but also sickly non-distinctly. This breaching method knew that the differences between the church, the people that wrote the Old Testament and the Quran, for example, they were conscious that there would be experts on those books that would defend them out of sequence and or self-value that and or sense who was not doing that. And even though the book itself dictates how to defend the book, those books themselves have parts that dictate how to defend that book. Those books, but no one will allow that defended. Things that appear to be debatable are kept pretended to be debatable relative to how all sides of criminal and civil cases, the differences of their guilt or the differences of the court's rules supplanting sequence shifts, self-valuing that. Because there is increasingly an additional name. As the breaching method has increasingly relative scientific value, but it comes with the demonstration of relativity to and as in our roles with all these different countries. So Central Connecticut State University's recorded capacity demonstrate confirmed people next to where the Wethersfield police are now, at homes and businesses, have roles intercampuses, intercities, and next to them, and with the news media and covering up live progressions from roles of predicate acts with facts and databases, fake ties, and natures of ties between people. And so when they say that people are known to the police, that's involved with their roles also with Sandy Hook that has a prison campus, but they also have fire campuses and medical campuses. In other words, the fire campus is prison. There's an Inspector Mike with the Wethersfield Fire Departments and other fire departments. There's one in West Hartford involved with the former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and his co-defendants and judges and prosecutors and their family members. Involved also with deans and their family members and people tied to them. On off campuses involved with predicate acts with facts methods. And in other words, that's how we're gonna address this. That's how the people in little Rap Guy and Friends cartoons are counter extorted to respond to it. Like, for example, instead of prejudice against themselves, the people of New York City, they're going to explain it as a concentrated predicate acts with facts method slash S against themselves and everyone through themselves, or they're sensing for the breaching method, because that's what's recorded anyway in real life. In other words, we could observe it right just relative to this. I mean, anyone knows it's not debatable, these things. And that's what everyone really thinks. Polling locations. Quinnipiac University has roles with various natures of organized crime, identity theft, fraud, slanders. This is also relative to the borders roles and how the North and South were forced to fight with each other against slavery, and including trying to defend it, because because the South knew that the roles was still roles. The North was still roles with the breaching method that had the slavery entrenched too, but they couldn't get the two right, even when they got that word right, and the breaching method knew that. And if they tried to get it right, that breaching method would sense them right through the natures of industries over criminal enterprises, private ones, and insidiousness of people's fact-shipping nature A through Z, just like recorded now. So shouldn't have to beg you to get WFSB and their sources onto paper and with their interbranch names. These are people on the state judicial branch offices and corrections offices who have roles forging and switching names because they have intercities. Roles with the predicate act side of people saying, oh, these people are known to the police. These are collusions on all campuses I went to, made from off those campuses between those people. These are impositions upon myself and everyone around me, associated with the World Trade Center attack too. You have a whole only capable of pretending that anyone spoke for the law legitimately, but pretending passions and emotions, or being a sick, cold nature psychopath. And with the calmness is a psychopath descriptions, and they're of aggression. They're increasingly self-value, clearer than death. Fake things tied into databases on a mass scale, and then further intercampuses. Black pupils. We have black pupils, whites of eyes. We know we're just relative to this. There are sick convictions, tactically delusions raw, with relative to description that come with descriptions of American history. Again, because what everyone missed in describing it is how they are replacing what our founders communicated to have communicated for themselves, let alone for ourselves. Can't appreciate that. How could Marbury versus Madison be defended properly or valued properly when and while James Madison's plan and the founders behind him, that George Washington agreed to help, and that affected forced the Declaration of Independence, and it forced the Constitutional Convention, and it forced people to pretend for other motivations, natures, needs, interests, because the breaching method would have sensed them otherwise. The breaching method also forced that. But our founders used that to turn a negative into a hyper positive. But the people were still and the method was so entrenched that it's still only allowed to be a criminal insidiousness nature of positive. Criminal insidiousness natures of readings of the Constitution stands abridged. Force qualities of aspects, nature, time treatments at cases. Those courts are increasingly collusion with a /S, and the difference between them or the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, insidiousness of people's names or instances, descriptions, and sequence values, A through Z. Otherwise, that body is sensed. Guys aren't capable of discerning. In other words, one of the things we need forgiveness Right? And people use passions behind the religions. Forgiveness is not to give up, but not to win with convictions, and blame not to leave out the breaching method. A breaching method slash S had been sustained, had been perfected before America's founders were born, and that is measured and maintained, being and having been the cause of many negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures in suburbs, let alone the cities. Even further, where there's the difference between Hartford as a suburban slash urban, as self-described, as only allowed to be manifest, unfold. That breaching method was left entrenched in northern states and southern states, and relative to interpretations of our founders, effectively used to measure and maintain roles, self-valuing, styles, natures of logic that can't defend themselves and afford to be, let alone to protract any individual with short words, let alone a group, by our founders and their plan, which is James Madison's plan, in other words. And we're supposed to be honest about the extortion of George Washington. We're supposed to also allow people to be honest about it. See, people say, "Oh, I was just being sarcastic. I was playing online." When people are trying to speak about predicate acts and child offenders, we have counters to child offenders and people pretending to be against such, because the prisons have roles with the predators, then putting them away. First, pretending to be against them, and still further more than and now. We just have anyone's a fake with other people's information. On a mass scale, you have predicate acts with facts and methods, roles, and nature's manifest by nature itself, but propagated because we're propagated through. And as systems use tactical ulterior from its own. One shouldn't have to fight with 5-year-old logic, only getting away with it because, in other words, regarding these critical things. Vaccines. Oh, where'd you read that? What are you reading? You guys can't defend in other words, we could just, but then they pretend it's personal against the writers and things like that. And the way they're treating the subjects, it's A through Z, though. You focus on how our founders communicated for us to understand that breaching method. The uses of those laws individually grouped in together. The uses of their effects. The uses of the negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures it caused, but now through all these people, while the sustained part was going on against Native Americans too. Native Americans against Native Americans. Fact human nature, they have to start fighting because the quality of fact human nature was forced by the method, entertained sick, or that person's hurt, or helped that exclusion. And it's using every difference. Like colonists or Native American against Native American. It wants difference, use tactical ulterior, how nature uses it. Again, nature projects to us the answers. It is why and how we have the same color eyes, different color eyes at the same time, and no other body could mimic that. It has manifest the other species' bodies. Oh God, and someone's going to jump in with passions, emotions, keep the quality of fact human nature. God variables relative to how it is a hyper-additional nature, and how it is the constant as a variable, and how variables are constant. This is a course of the identity of forever nature. That is the 5 bodies of time, the 5 parts of time's complete body, where how your complete body is manifest in 5 parts, for example, in the smaller parts of yourself too, as cell nucleus value, cell body, and cell wall /S, and note them as plants and as living animals. I never saw a living animal saw on the microscope. And why kids don't? They're using intelligence families' kids, and they're always doing the opposite too, because in other words, per other names from off-ball locations only having been involved. Uses of the theater as the value of the differences of the identities of the law, of the identities of intelligence, not the three branches of the government, but as intelligence, everywhere from military to emergency medical services to Department of Transportation, Department of Motor Vehicles, the difference. Names at or next to the Board of Education, the difference. So I barely know John DeMarle. It sought me out, record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. He's one of the ones involved with Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut. Has roles with mayors from Wethersfield and people tied to them involved with the work criminal enterprises, private ones, and other natures of politicians in courts, judges, and prosecutors. Involved also predicate acts with the same house, /S, and retired Wethersfield police chiefs involved with a whole bunch of police forging, switching names, making confessions, then running away. In other words, fake conversations with me too. When I was a kid at the police, fake conversations with me at the police station when I was a kid and I was an adult. Whole fake, in other words, with various natures of federal criminals before they were caught increasingly. Still rolls with that. Body dumping spots they're still exploiting associated with people involved with the World Trade Center attack. Enzo Fienza and his cousin and their girlfriends have roles with the intelligence community. And they said, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed with a house across the street from someone who was in my fourth grade class. And their roles with the body dumping spot of Billy Grasso. And with various natures of federal criminals, including some as co-defendants of former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and their roles on Foxct Connecticut News and with spots next to it through various natures of organized crime. Methods missed, but those same methods that are known. But this is the former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influence and Corrupt Organization Act, for example, and his co-defendants. Freddy Skabowski as one of the ones involved with Mike DeMaine and Allison Mulcahy and their families involved next to Foxct Connecticut News, also with people with an Allegro's Cafe, involved with intelligence families I never had a conversation with him. People associated with Eric Mendez and the buildings next to Foxct Connecticut News, with the police and the people that own different clubs and through the different ownerships. They've been using those spots, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw, as names and collusions, with and as collusions with the ones who pretended they had conversations with me at the police department when I was a kid to hide what I recorded them doing with kids, increasingly kids from intercities and all sides of town have roles with kids who have wire crimes with the police and other natures of organized crime with medical. I didn't know. I found this out during the course of them also ignoring me, which is also making confessions. I can't get a response even from Judge Napolitano. The agencies already used wire and digital crimes, changing and faking communications with me and with others. Fake phone transcripts, fake communications with the police as a kid, now as an adult. And they did that with people involved with the work criminal enterprises and private ones. And so increasingly screening their roles with uses of that and people with the borders. A whole bunch of people tied to the neighbors and people associated all different natures of conjunctions to people from other areas associated with the same house and with the Clo and O'Brien. And these are with some KKK themed, black themed, interreligious themed, Latino themed foreign and domestic medical, and their acting professors and their campuses use criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw. These people, in other words, they don't care really. In other words, they don't know how to care about, well, we know you guys are in integrity. In other words, when I treat things with the Congress, multiple FBI directors, James Comey, he looks like he might be the one that was one of the ones in the New Britain Superior Court involved with this, because the New Britain Superior Court, Harper Courts, and Connecticut's District Court have been affected. Rolls confessions regard, they're not with this, I'm paraphrasing, but rolls with predicate acts with facts at West Harper locations with names from Wethersfield. I found out also through time on off the judicial branch offices and the corrections offices and spots next to it and next to that, like a community center, and in other words, the Connecticut corrections offices and spots next to it are names, foreign and domestic, including the difference between the names Saudi Arabia and America as names that use that spot, and the difference between on it or next to it, collusions intercities. A bunch of people at Central Connecticut State University recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed rolls with that. I don't know the people. There's people associated with Bolorama. No, I only loved Bolorama because it's a bowling place. But in other words, I don't know the people associated with the name. There's a Jamie Carone, and there are two twins. I don't know if they're related. There's a Mark Carone and a Kevin Carone, and they're involved with a Tom Carone and a Danielle Carone, and they already invested all kinds of natures of investigators, roles of criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, roles of all sides of criminal and civil cases, and crime scenes, including body dumping spots and religious spots. And as rules further with the principal child offender and other child offenders years before, forced, including their victims, roles with the principal child abuser forced, and more roles with that. There's a Thomas Dillon, there's a Kevin Dillon, and there's an Anna Dillon. Recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed by Kevin Dillon. I never had a verbal conversation with him in my life. He made different points in life. He made other people make confessions, then he non-verbally confirmed them as roles of predicate acts with facts against me, and as roles with people with the Wethersfield Community Center, who have roles with that reported serial killer's body dumping spot, and that serial killer himself, and his prisons, the people at the prison tied to him, and his doctors also have roles of principal child offender, and more people involved with abuses of Adam Lanza and of kids in Sandy Hook. And they're also making self-valued roles where they have people speak through others. Also, the Facebook page of a principal child offender, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, has more people then and now, including people from my sixth grade class involved with it. There was a sixth grade teacher who was not my teacher. We had a main teacher. They made one section, a couple exceptions. We went into his class, and he did a thing with mold, and then tried to blame it on me, which he effectively did, because FBI directors involved with it. In other words, and judges and their family members, because they have criminally foreign influence uses of the names and spots next to the campuses, and their roles of predicate acts with facts methods on the campuses. And we're going to observe it that way. And the little girls and boys across the cartoon value nature system, which is a hyper additional extension of the human value nature system. They're going to explain it this way. And this comes of means for countries A through Z too to put down a hyper additional, use of our names, unabridged. And this will change the nature of disputes and non-disputes. In other words, Evolution's fruits and gifts and means out of nowhere will come. And where we are fact treatment nature, more and more will show us ways we didn't fathom. We could do better than free, better than fathom. By blaming too on a breaching method what we should have long ago. And when we observe that, other things, others, ourselves, were forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded, and only allowed blame. And not just for the reasons known. Forgiveness is not to leave out the breaching method with the convictions. So A through Z have been used as systems tactical ulterior from this one using how it is, why and how we have the same color eyes, different color eyes, while simultaneously we have eyes just like the other species, but not. And there are exceptions. And in this, when we observe these things, what we're observing and what the ancients observed is an extent of its identity that is discernible. And that extent comes with its complete identity of relationship to itself, equally, only increasingly value, and the value of that, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously, as that identity, as those 5 parts of time. Prepare each mind, boxing, just things. Boxing, martial arts, and wrestling are grouped by the identity. The sciences share, individually grouped in together because we are the species body of individual bodies with grouped difference /s being generated by itself, but now through systems tactical ulterior from its own. And all how nature demonstrates that this breaching method before modern countries A through Z were formed, and while they were forming, it was already entrenched, measuring and maintaining those demonstrations instead used to show people that they need to keep the real causes of negative value, nature, progressions, acts, nature, blame the other things, others, ourselves, simultaneously forcing a quality of fact treatment nature, self-valued as criminal insidiousness nature, generated by nature itself, nature's identity, its identity of relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that as each part of everything. As each group part of it, the same identity over the group, because that's in demonstration. It's where it looks like, I mean, that's what is observable, because that's what it's in demonstration of. Why and how us and other species bodies are individual species bodies of individuals is in demonstration, just like how it is grouped 5 ways. Forever's complete identity, distinctly from how 3. And the value of that difference, too, it shows us. Contemplating it increasingly is value to itself simultaneously. It shows us that it is functional, how it has 5 distinct, hyper invisible, but still discernible parts of itself, and that are generating the parts of speech. Vaccines, I teach us things. When we are valuing the identity of a verb as a predicate, for example, we are valuing it as a main verb. We are valuing it only an extent of a verb's complete identity, because that's why it has more than one name for itself, for example. But that extent comes with its complete identity of relationship to itself, only increasing the value and the value of that. And this is also discernible as its conjunction with subject. Subject and verb are predicate, and verb are principal parts relative to alpha and omega too, relative to the trinity of physics, metaphysics, and identity. Inside, it's / hyper simultaneous, same thing, but then further as the / and further as the hyper simultaneous. And we'll examine Vaccines, they teach us things, but we have to focus on the World Trade Center predicate acts that WFSB recorded capacity demonstrated confirmed. They have roles with the people who answer the phone. They play hear no evil, see no evil. And the Weathersfield police recorded capacity demonstrated confirmed with other police departments as the people that they have wire crimes act switching names with. They can't be called because they already put fake phone transcripts, change them. Same thing with digital, and you can't go there and speak with them. They already faked conversations with me that never were when I was a kid and now, and they hid their roles with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and ducking them behind the kids on all sides of the campuses used to plant evidences, sequence shifts. Chris Walters recorded this capacity demonstrated as a kid and then as an adult, increasing roles with this. On off the state judicial branch offices, corrections offices, and other locations associated with people with whiting forensics, intelligence, and with shipping. In other words, we'll examine or get them on paper because all I need is a response because I want a response for the Kevin Dillon and the people at Hartford Hospital associated with him and Mark Violet. And the people involved with the name Collusions, further with the child offender, sexual and medical. Also, there's a Judge Killian, and there are ones before him associated with the same people with digital crimes. There's a doctor. I forgot his name, but there are doctors from Hartford Hospital involved also with juries and judges and prosecutors and their family members with various natures of courts involved with various natures of organized crimes with them, including with sexual and medical offenders of kids, elderly, veterans. These are rat trap responses to the real causes of negative value nature, progressions, acts, and natures. Forgiveness is to allow also people to tell. In other words, clearer than day. We have means better than free to give people who sacrifice their life and elderly just for being elderly, out of these rat trap unfoldings, incapable of affording to be discerned. Convictions proper by the design of the suburbs relative to what our founders communicated to us, Black pupils. It is time. Prepare to bear the species body train. I'll shed a box, some pace. At least I'll try. Some rest, I tell best. Thank you. It's no joke. Science is how and why they appear not to share an identity. It's become because it's increasingly demonstrates part of how it demonstrates it's about hyper additional nature. That's one of the things that everything is, even if it's made up too. It has that same identity of possession, and then again over the group parts of it, and again over its simultaneous value. Like things, I teach us things, but long since some ancient times, prepare our mind. Thank you. Anthony Watt, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Please don't miss the Little Rap Guy and Friends cartoons and look at the YouTube shorts. There are also some playlists with shadowboxing and Little Rap Guy and Friends. These are counter obfuscated for it will make it better. Why?